I thought I knew my wife until I let her date other men. I sat in the chair staring at the screen of my laptop. The evening was cold, but the apartment was warm. A faint smell of coffee still lingered in the air. It was an ordinary day. My life was moving along as usual. I thought nothing would change, that everything would stay the same, just like always. But in that moment, I had no idea that my life was about to change forever. My wife, Christina, had always been perfect. We had lived together for many years, and our life was quiet and stable. I was always proud of having such a wife, beautiful, smart, caring. We rarely argued, and there were no major problems. But I knew that in every marriage and every family there are nuances that remain hidden. Occasionally, a slight shadow of boredom would creep into our relationship, but I considered it normal. The hustle of work, the worries, everyday concerns, these things sometimes overshadowed our deeper emotions. But everything changed when I noticed that something was off. At first, it was small things. She started coming home later. Sometimes, a strange shadow would appear on her face, as if she was hiding something. I didn't want to worry over nothing, but it didn't sit right with me. I decided it was better to check her phone, just to make sure everything was okay. That was my mistake. The moment I saw his name in her messages was a moment I would never forget. His name and his words, the way she responded. There was something strange about it that I couldn't explain. My thoughts became jumbled. There was no anger, no fury, just confusion and a cold sense of unease. I didn't immediately confront her. I stayed silent. It was agonizing. I didn't know what to do. She noticed my silence and soon spoke up. "You're changing. I feel like you become less attentive," she said one day, but there was no usual confidence in her voice. In her eyes, I noticed something new, something I didn't like. It wasn't a lie, but in her words, I sensed echoes of something else, something hidden. And then when her words finally came, when she admitted that it wasn't just an accident, but a conscious choice, I felt something dark rising from within. My first reaction was furious. I wanted to scream that this was the end, that this was unforgivable. But instead, I felt a strange emptiness. It wasn't just shock. It was something deeper, something strange and unfamiliar. "He was different. You don't understand? We just couldn't communicate like this," she said. Her voice was a mix of regret and despair. "I didn't want you to know. I was hoping this would stay our little secret." At first, I thought it was nothing more than a simple physical attraction, a mistake that could be forgiven. But the way she talked about him, about how everything happened, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. Not just a physical betrayal, but something deeper, something that had connected her to him on an emotional level. I felt my perception of her begin to shift. I couldn't understand why she had done this. But when I tried to imagine her with him, I suddenly felt a strange envy. I didn't want to let her go, didn't want her to be with him. But at the same time, in a strange way, I realized that something about it excited me. It was like trying to understand what was going on in her soul when she was with him. I won't lie, I didn't even know how to react. Was this true betrayal, or was it just a game that went beyond what I could understand? I didn't know, but I knew one thing. I couldn't forget what she had told me, how she felt with him. And strangely enough, I started to like it. It began to intrigue me. I started to wonder if she could change like this, maybe I could change too. And it began with small steps. I started asking her more about what had happened. Instead of fighting it, I began to be grateful to her for showing me this new world. I started to think that this wasn't the end, but rather a new beginning. But the further I went, the more I realized that something new was growing in my feelings for her. And it was starting to attract me. As the days passed, the strangeness of the situation settled in, but not as something unpleasant. In fact, it began to fester in the back of my mind, taking root in ways I hadn't anticipated. Instead of feeling repulse, I found myself intrigued by the thought of her with him, and with other men. It was unsettling, yes, but somehow, it felt as if it awakened a part of me I didn't know existed. I couldn't stop myself from asking her more questions. I wanted to know the details, the emotions she had experienced. Her eyes, the way she spoke about him, it all lit a spark in me. It was bizarre, but I started to feel a strange sense of arousal in imagining her with others. It wasn't just the physical side of things. It was the power dynamic, the idea that she was desired, that I wasn't the only one who could have her. It made me feel strangely proud, though I didn't understand why. The more we talked, the more I found myself sinking into this dark curiosity, and soon it became an obsession. I began to ask her to tell me about her encounters, the other men she had been with. Her face would flush when she shared, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. Satisfaction in knowing I was listening, perhaps even enjoying the details. That's when I realized I wasn't just passively accepting this. I was becoming an active participant. One evening, she was getting ready to go out. She'd been chatting with someone on Tinder, and as she was adjusting her outfit, she turned to me and asked, "Do you mind if I go out with him tonight?" I didn't say a word at first. I just stared at her, my mind racing. Then, in a voice I hardly recognized as my own, I said, "No, go ahead." It felt like a test, and I was the one passing it. I watched her leave, feeling this intense rush in my chest. But that wasn't enough. It wasn't just about her going out anymore. It was about me being in control of it all. The next few weeks felt like a blur. It started innocently enough. I hear her talk about dates with men she met online, her excitement, the tension in her voice. She would describe the intimacy, sometimes even with a little detail, but she knew what she was doing. She knew it excited me. But soon it wasn't enough for her to just tell me. I began setting up the dates. I started matching her with men on Tinder, carefully selecting profiles that fit the image I wanted. I'd even send messages for her, set up plans for her to meet them, all while watching her eyes light up at the idea. She'd ask me if I was sure, if I really wanted her to do this, and I would answer without hesitation, "Yes, I want you to." It became a game for us, an unspoken rule that we followed. I was the puppet master and she was the marionette, the one who moved at my bidding. And though it repulsed me at first, I grew to crave it, to need it. The control, the knowing that she was out there being with other men while I stayed at home. But it wasn't just control, it was the power I felt over her, over our relationship, that made it addictive. The lines between pleasure and pain, desire and jealousy blurred. I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. And though my wife was still the same woman, somehow she was different now. She had become something I couldn't own, but at the same time she was mine in ways that felt more real than ever.